there. So I have a big pile of books right next to me. You can't actually see them, but basically I'm going to be talking about all my favorite books. So 5-star reads, book that I highly recommend. I think I did a video like this quite a while ago on my channel, but it's been such a long time and I've read lots of good books since then that I figured I would do kind of like an updated. I had just started the video and my camera died, so I had to grab a new battery, but we're back. Anyway, yeah, I kind of want to talk about some of the books that I've loved for a while now. Here's me literally trying to pick them up. It's a pretty big list, but I'm really excited because I love these books. Of course, this is not every 5-star read I've ever read. I do not own some of the books that I've read that I think are 5 stars because I do a lot of library borrowing. So there's that. But I also, besides giving you reasons why I love these books, I'm also going to give some reasons as to why I think other people would love these books and why I think you should read them. So to begin, the first book that I'm going to talk about is The Tattooist of Auschwitz. This book I read quite a while ago. I think I was in college when I read this book, and it really hit a part of me that I didn't think it would. I was starting to get back into reading when I first picked this up, and I absolutely loved it because it's kind of a romance, but it's definitely historical fiction, and it's kind of a true story. The two characters in this book were real. They were a couple at Auschwitz, and I don't want to dwell into it or jump into it too much because I would rather you pick up the book and read it and find out for yourself. But essentially, of course, as the theme, you would imagine it's very emotional, very sad, but there's still a romance element, and if you know me, I'm a big romance gal, so a lot of these books will be kind of romance or historical fiction because those are just the genres that I gravitate towards. But like I mentioned, I'm going to talk about why I think you would also like it. So basically this one was just really emotional, and I think sometimes you need an emotional book. If you need like a good cry, if you need a romance that you root for, if you need some like real true events in history that happened and you want kind of some insight into that, I think this is a great book to pick up. It definitely had a lasting impact on me personally. Another book that I rated 5 stars is Archer's Voice. This is probably my favorite romance book ever now. I read it last year and it took me, I can't believe it took me that long to read this book because it's super popular. You've probably heard of it before, but essentially, Essentially, it's about this girl named Bree who moves into this new little town, and she meets Archer, who is kind of like a recluse. He lives by himself. He doesn't talk. He like literally doesn't talk, physically cannot speak. And so that's kind of the two main characters, and then of course their like friendship romance build. We get a lot of backstory into Archer's life, which is very tragic and sad, but the romance in this was just probably one of the best romances I've ever read. It was so pure, it was so innocent, it just gave you like butterflies, but in the cutest way possible. That's why I really enjoyed this book. So if you're a romance gal, absolutely read this. I think you'll really enjoy it. There is still some like mysterious elements to it because there's some things that happen in this book that are very questionable and it will just have your mind spinning, but the romance, that is absolutely my favorite part of this book and why I absolutely loved it. Also, the setting is a really cute place. It takes place in a little town called Pelion, I believe. Yeah, a small town of Pelion, Maine. So I don't know if that's a real town or whatnot, but it's really cutely described in this book. So that definitely adds to everything. One of my favorite romance ever. Next up is going to be another romance. I promise there's more than just romance in here, but it's going to be Addicted for Now from the Addicted series. This is the 3rd book in the Addicted series. Now, a reason why I think other people would love it, if you're into series, then this is a great one to pick up. This is the 3rd book, but the first 2 are not super hard to get into at all. It's very easy to read. Essentially, the two main characters, Lo and Lily, have addictions. Lo is addicted to alcohol, he's an alcoholic, and Lily is a sex addict. So that's really rare. I feel like I have never read a book like this. I have never read a book with characters that have addictions like this, and they're of course like together, kind of. Essentially, it's a very toxic story, but it's very real and raw. They're both like teenagers or young adults at the beginning of this series, so it's very difficult to read in the sense that your heart goes out to them. Like, they have these true addictions, and it just goes into how this ruins relationships, friendships, life in general. And then of course, once you get to the 3rd book, they're kind of growing together in a sense, and this one was just really good. The romance again was just top tier, and Lily and Lo are now one of my favorite book couples ever. Moving on to the next book, it is going to be The Great Alone by Chris and Hannah. This is a book that I recently read that has now become one of my favorite books ever. This book is so raw, essentially, is how I would describe it. The setting is absolutely beautiful. It takes place in Alaska. That's where the Great Alone is, basically. But it's much more than that. It has an amazing setting, which I feel like makes books so much easier to read, but it touches on super, some taboo topics, honestly, like mental health, men's mental health, veterans and their PTSD symptoms and how that affects families. And there's tragedy in this book, there's friendships, there's love, there's family. It was just like a breath of fresh air. It is a pretty chunky book. It's about 500 plus pages, but honestly, I read this in like 2 days because that is just how hooked I was into this story. I think it's the author herself. Like Kristen Hanna's writing is beautiful. It just like traps you and it does not let go. Like, you just have to read it and see what happens. This is about a girl, her name is Lenny, and her dad was a veteran from the Vietnam War. He suffers from mental health issues. Very triggering subjects talked about in this book, so absolutely check some trigger warnings because domestic violence is one of the things that is brought up a lot in this book. So yeah, check your trigger warnings. But anyway, I loved this book so much because I think it does more. I mean, Lenny and her parents are the main focus of this book, but the side characters are all so vivid and complex, and it makes you root for the side characters. I literally felt like I was reading a book about a town. Like everyone was involved. Everyone had their part in this book, and I really, really enjoyed that. We do focus on Lenny and her parents, but again, the whole town is what makes this book so good. It's what gives it a good, like, the chunkiness, but also a good novel, you know, a good story, is that everyone is involved, everyone has their part, and some tragic things happen to other characters as well. So it's a beautiful book. If you have never read Kristen Hanna, I definitely recommend picking up this one. This was actually my first Kristen Hanna book ever, but I own like a few of her other books, and now I need to read them because I loved her writing. So I can't wait. It's my first, but not my last. I think you should read this. Moving on to a book that's really popular that I'm sure you've seen everywhere, and it's had its like popularity probably 2 years ago, but I still think about this book and it is one of my favorite books. It's going to be Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, just to put it out there, Taylor Jenkins Reid is an amazing author, and I've read almost every single book of hers, and I think they're all like 4.5 stars and up. Maybe one was like 4 stars, but they're just really, really good. So in general, pick up any Taylor Jenkins Reid book and you will be fine. But specifically this one I think was really, really good because it's a historical fiction, but it focuses on a family. It focuses on the Riva family, who are wealthy. They live in Malibu, California. So if you want the aesthetic of Malibu, California in the 1980s, with wealth and surfing and movie stars and friendships, then you should read this book. But my favorite thing about this book was just the family. It focuses on Nina Riva, who is the older sister, and she has a few younger siblings, boys and girls, and then her absent father. And also, I think if you're an older sister, this book would hit particularly harder. I'm not an older sister, but if I were, I feel like this book would have made me cry even more than I did. And I will admit, this book made me cry. It made me emotional because Nina Riva is an amazing character and I love her so much. And towards the end of this book, things happen, it gets crazy, and Nina finally like just stands up for herself essentially. But the bare synopsis of this is basically the Riva family. So Nina and her siblings always throw like a summer party, and this year by the next morning the house is on fire, literally. The party went up in flames and everyone is just kind of like, what the hell happened? So if you want to know what happened, basically read this book and find out. And if you enjoy this one, then definitely read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, because the father in this book is one of the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So that's pretty cool too. Okay, next book. Another romance, my second favorite romance ever. It is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I'm sure you've seen this book before because it is so popular, so talked about, highly rated, and for good reason. Essentially, it's a romance, childhood best friends to lovers. First of all, that's my favorite trope. Second of all, they both love books. They both love reading. It's a big part of this book, and that always makes me happy. And I love that because it's about characters who have the same love and passion for reading as I do. So of course, that's always like entertaining to read. This is like dual timeline and dual POV. I think I read this a long time ago, and I honestly have to reread it because if I'm true to my word and I say it's one of my favorite romances ever, then I have to reread it and find out what the heck it's about. This book had my jaw on the floor by the time I finished with it. There is some of that miscommunication trope in here, but I think it's really well done. Usually I'm not a big fan of the miscommunication trope because it makes things so frustrating, but this one I think handled it well, and it does it obviously integral to the story. It's just, it's good. If anything, read it because it is so popular and highly rated for a reason. People love this book, so if you haven't read it, maybe read it and have your own opinion as to if you think it should be as highly rated as it is or if it's overhyped. But in my opinion, it's a beautiful book. Oh, and I think you'll love this because again, it is a romance. It's about book lovers, which is like my favorite thing ever. It just has so many good tropes in it, basically, like childhood best friends to lovers. That's amazing. But also it gets really, really emotional, like this last few percent of the book that I think makes the entire book worth it, even if you didn't enjoy the first like 70%, but you will because it's so good. But I'm just saying, like, this part carries the book and it's just so good. So read it. If you need just like a good romance recommendation, it's this one. Okay, moving on. One Day in December by Josie Silver. This is again another one of my favorite books, rated at 5 stars. This book was actually, I was really surprised to have fallen in love with it, but essentially it's about two best friends, Lori and Sarah. And this, even like what I'm about to tell you what this book is about, you're gonna be like, that does not sound interesting. But basically Lori, this takes place in London, so she's about to hop onto the big red bus and she sees a guy named Jack. She doesn't know his name is Jack, but she sees a guy sitting on the like bus stop and she falls in love with him. It's like basically love at first sight, right? And so she spends years and so much time trying to find this guy, and essentially that guy is dating her best friend. And so this is a book about friendship, it's a book about love, it's a book about soulmates, destiny. There's so many journeys this book takes you on, and I really did not expect to love it. But I remember after I read this book, I could not stop thinking about it. Even to this day, I think about it. I think I just loved the friendship in here. There's ups and downs, really high ups and really low downs. But it's female friendship at its finest, mixed in with romance, mixed in with like soulmates type love, and it was amazing. I really enjoyed it. And the setting, again, London, beautiful. But I think a reason why this kind of pans to a lot of people is that it is a book club pick. So if you do end up reading this, there are tons of other people who have also read it, so you can talk and discuss about your feelings because it's a Reese's book club pick. Hang in there, I'm almost done. But the next book is a recent 5-star read, and it is Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. This is book number 2 in the Magnolia Parks universe. So one of the reasons why you should read it is because it is another series book, but the series is pretty short. I think there's 5 books total and they interchange. So first one is Magnolia Parks, second book is Daisy Hates, third book goes back to Magnolia Parks, fourth book is a Daisy Hates book. So it's like 2 main characters. It's all the same friendship in the same world, but it's just the different points of view. So Magnolia Parks, if you've seen this channel before, you know my thoughts and feelings about Magnolia Parks. Let's not go there. But Daisy Hates, 5 stars. 5 stars. This book is truly a romance book, which in my opinion, Magnolia Parks is not. This one has the romance. It has wealthy London socialites, is essentially what it's about, but it has lust, it has the yearning, it has danger in it, because this book is about Daisy, who is literally in a gang lord family. Her brother is a gang lord, and so she's surrounded by like all these gang big shot people in her life, and she's just trying to live her normal life. But of course, normal to her is being surrounded with like security 24/7, living in like this compound. She's really wealthy, but she can't have that actual normal life. And then male main character is Christian Hems, who is also in that lifestyle, and they just kind of, you know, have their path. And there is toxicity, there is drama, but at the end of the day, I think there is romance, which makes me love this book so much. And their love, their like relationship or whatever they have was so good. And Jessa Hastings' writing, a lot of people talk about Jessa Hastings' writing, and in my opinion, for good reason, it is really good. Anyway, yeah, the writing is very like lyrical and very pretty. There's so many quotes that you'll find in this book, and I think that's why a lot of people like it. But it's so interesting. It's like romance, but also like mysterious gang lord love. Like, I feel like that's kind of rare, right? The last book, this book was my 2023 favorite book of the year. It is The Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. I have yet to read another Kristen Harmel book, which is my fault, my bad, honestly. So I don't know if it's like a one book wonder or whatever, but like this book was really good. I gave it 5 stars right away. It made me cry. It was emotional. It's a book about romance. It's historical fiction. It's a book about book lovers who are book lovers. Like, you know, I think that's my favorite like sub genre, is books about people who love books. But there's tragedy in here, there's war, it's, you know, World War II. This one is also dual timeline, so you start out with Ava Traub Abrams is her name, is the main character's name. You start out when she's like 80, like she's really old and she's a librarian and she kind of, you know, is really chill. And then someone finds a book and asks her about it, and it's like, oh, like, what is this book? Or something like that. And it takes her back because this book has very, very important significance to her, and you will read and find out why. But I thought that was a really cool and interesting way of starting the book. It's like, oh, she's old, she's innocent little librarian, but then you go back into her story of her being a young adult, and it's crazy. You will not believe what this woman has gone through and what she has done and what she has survived and overcome. Favorite book of 2023, hands down. If you have not read it, I think you should read it. Anyway, I think that's it with my stack of books that I recommend. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you have read any of these books that I've talked about, maybe comment below and we can discuss. Did you like them? Did you not like them? What did you like about them? What did you not like about them? To me, these are all 5 stars. They're amazing. They're good. They're great. Love them. Reading is very subjective, so I know some of you have probably read some of these books and hated them. So I want to know why. Let me know. And hopefully you guys enjoyed. We'll see. Catch you in the next one. Peace.